Your parents have left, and you've got the place to yourself tonight. Your friends are coming over, and one of them is bringing the game. You dim the lights. They light the candles. An old lettered board is laid on the floor, and beneath your fingers, the planchette begins to wake. Before long, your call out through the darkness is heard. Something pulls itself from the dark corners of the room and joins your circle. And it's grinning as it puts its fingers next to yours. Join us on this episode of Belief Hole as we travel down the dark alley of Ouija history and recount untold, harrowing true tales of Ouija board horror and the deceiving dead.
Conspiracy,
synchronicity,
Sasquatch,
homunculus,
alien races,
Satanism in Hollywood, MK Ultra, Tartaria.
There's like a whole, I've been watching this one guy
Close the door, Ed.
Jeremy, close your door!
What's the,
Inner Earth disagreements.
Ghost Dad.
I like that movie.
Dogman.
Bohemian Grove.
Feldman.
Magicians are demons.
Specters and
Spirit
spooks.
summonings.
Sleep
Paralysis.
Strange disappearances.
Sky whale phenomenon.
Alternative history. Shadow people.
Shh, quiet, I'm trying to say words with the mouth.
It's getting dicey out there.
Poltergeists.
That's cool.
Anunnaki. What is the moon?
Elf towers. I would never talk about it. That's old. Y2K.
Cover-ups. Apocalyptic catastrophe. Vampire.
Well, hello.
Hi. Hello. Welcome to Belief Hole. I'm Jeremy.
I'm John.
And I am Chris. And you today are our lucky listeners because today, as we drop this episode, will be the very first day of the month of Halloween. So I guess that makes us all lucky. Yeah, because it's our favorite season, right, guys?
It goes quite well with our show.
Month of mystery.
Yes.
This will begin a long Belief Hole month because we'll actually have 3 episodes dropping.
Yes, we had to reconfigure our schedule a tad, as you'll remember from last episode if you were here, because we are in our new studio and we had to soundproof it, which I would say I think has been working rather well.
We did a fantastic job.
We did a pretty good DIY job on that window.
Yes. It took about 4 days to just do one window, but
We built it.
we are now in a cave.
Yes. Anyway, I think we all kind of thought a good idea for the first episode of this spooky season would be kind of an episode of warning. I kind of thought doing stories of the Ouija board, for some reason every year it comes around and I think, what a fun idea.
It's fun until it goes wrong.
Exactly. Well, it's game-esque, right?
It's interactive.
It's like a board game.
And there's potential for mischief.
Exactly. And there's this allure because it is, especially with the season now of breaking into the other world, the veils lifting the realms so closely tied together with Samhain and all that. At the heart of the Ouija idea, or the Ouija idea, is the ability to reach over and communicate with something. And of course, yeah, that sounds fun, especially if you're a kid, you don't know how serious to take things. And for some reason, every year, I always forget how dark it can go. And like the warning aspects of these stories.
You don't remember from all the other episodes we've done?
I mean, I do, but there's something that, I don't know if it's the board that makes me forget. It doesn't want me to remember. And it's like, try, Jeremy. Try it out. There's still an allure for me. Despite all the terrible, I still do not recommend doing it.
No, yeah, I mean, and you'll hear some stories in this episode why it probably isn't the best idea. Unless you really know what you're doing. I don't know if there's people out there that I guess you'd have to almost be medium-esque.
Well, people claim to be, to use it as a
I'm sure
tool.
there are probably people that know more what they're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the big takeaway from it, for me at least, is if you believe, like I believe, that you are opening up a doorway to speak to something, it's not guaranteed that you're going to speak to something that's nice or something that wants to communicate. So what I'm saying is, at the end of the day, there's always opportunity for risk. Kind of the darkest kind of risk.
It's kind of like getting on a boat and going in the middle of the ocean and jumping in.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, while carrying raw hamburger meat.
Well, it may not be that extreme, but you just don't know what's in the water.
Right. Ooh, good way to put it, John.
That's true.
and it's not your realm.
Depending on who is using the board, though. Like, I do think people that maybe are unbalanced emotionally, unbalanced mentally, spiritually, that could be like hamburger meat.
Oh, for sure. Yes. Yeah. I think that I'm sure there would be scuba divers and professional swimmers that would be like, I would never touch the Ouija board, but I'm fine going in the ocean. It's not nearly as dangerous as playing with the Ouija board.
I doubt that.
What?
Do you think there's a lot of deep ocean divers that were like, it just seems like a weird comparison.
Well, I think they would get off a boat and not be scared or not think it's dangerous.
You can make a comparison as those people that are divers that know what they're doing can be like people that know what they're doing. It's like, mediums or that have an idea of like how to navigate those waters, so to speak.
And if you guys haven't heard our episodes on this, by the way, I just realized this is our first public episode on the Ouija board. We've done one in the first season, which is now archived for members. And then we have the Zozo episode we did, which covered a lot of the history of the Ouija board, kind of the mysteries that lie in there. And that's also in the expansion. So this is our first public one. Well, we did a public one, but it became archived. Yeah, from the first season. But yeah, to that point, John, what were you just saying that I was bouncing off of?
Ocean swimmers.
Ocean swimmers. These ocean swimmers.
Mother ocean.
Yeah, to that point, John, controversial because there are people, of course, that believe there's no way to be safe playing the Ouija board.
Yeah, I kind of in that camp.
I don't think there's any way you can be completely safe. Even if you're well practiced, you never know. There's always a risk that something more powerful than what you're able to understand. You're opening a door, you never know what's going to be on the other side.
Right, that's true. Bottom line is we are not experts. We don't fully know.
Well, I've had one experience with the board that was successful, and although it was not frightening in the moment, but it was astonishing, the rest of that night held this dark heaviness, weighted feeling of oppression in the normal apartment that I was in, my ex-girlfriend's apartment, which was normally a normal environment. But there was that feeling, that oppression that you often hear, which, did you have that experience? Because you were there that night too when we did it at your friend Abby's house. During the game, it was almost kind of... it was thrilling because it was someone coming through. We got answers from a friend of ours whose father died, and they answered this question. How many fish did we catch that day? Meaning her and her father, when they went fishing on this very memorable day, which no one could have known except for her. So we couldn't move the planchette, and it moved to the right number, which I think was 4. And she started like tearing up. Yeah, visibly shaken. Yeah, like she wouldn't have done that to just freak us out because she was obviously very emotionally connected to that. And so at that point, it was thrilling. It was fascinating. Yeah, and it wasn't until later that there was this kind of darkness. And there is this theme, this through line with these stories you get where it is thrilling, and it can even be helpful or seem like a helpful spirit or entity that you're talking with.
So they lure you in.
Yeah. And then at some point, inevitably, the board turns nasty. Yes.
After you're already hooked, which reminds me of the movie we just saw.
Oh, that's right.
Talk to Me.
Talk to Me, yeah. Very well done. Very well done. If you guys haven't seen it.
It's a creepy movie. It's not the Ouija board itself, but it has very similar undertones.
Yeah. The tool in it, I won't give too much away.
It's a hand.
It's a hand.
Well, that's not a spoiler.
I guess that's true. It's essentially, the story behind it is that it's a hand, the embalmed hand of a medium who had died, and at some point they had put plaster over it, and it somehow found its way to teenagers using it at a party to communicate with the dead. It's a really unique, I think, look at spirit communication, obviously fictionalized. And to look at when we all come across this stuff when we're younger.
Yeah.
And like you were saying, John, that atmosphere of excitement and intrigue and
danger.
Danger. And you're watching this and you're like, what this is doing to kids when they are playing with this toy, similar to the Ouija board in real life, it's ridiculous to think that this would be like a party favor, like a fun thing you do, like drinking, doing drugs, and then this game connecting with the dead. It doesn't seem, especially with what happens in the movie, that it would be like a party thing. But at that age, there is that high you get with just the thrill of, being together as adolescents and, what can go wrong, the mystery, the danger. And so I could see how something like that could happen. You also feel immortal at that age. Exactly.
Yeah. We got an interesting comment from someone on YouTube about this. It's interesting that this was turned into like a game, distributed millions around the world.
Right.
And if you think about some of the deeper layers of our world, a lot of people think that there are some powerful groups that, may be colluding with this side of darkness. Yeah, like
to seed the world with darkness.
If you believe that they're, it's like almost like opening up portals all over the...
Oh, that's a fascinating idea. The idea of, basically sending it out to unknowingly
just make it a fun game for kids.
That will create doorways in the home of every suburb. Yeah.
That's a movie plot right there.
That's the alternative history of the Ouija board. Yeah. Or Ouija board. It's interesting because, we've covered the history of it in the past before, but the guy who developed it, Kennard was his name, but he was like a tinkerer, inventor guy.
The original guy who invented it, or didn't invent it, because really it came out of the talking boards from the spiritual movement.
Mm-hmm.
But this guy was from Ohio, and he was kind of an inventor, and he was in a building next to a guy who used to be a furniture maker and then became a coffin maker and a mortician. And so they got together, heard about these talking boards. They started to make it. Kennard eventually moved away, started his own talking board thing, finally got an investor. And that's how you get the name of the board, the investor that started investing. His sister-in-law, she was a medium, and she was the one who convinced the patent office that this was real. And she's the one who's allegedly the board had spelled out the name of it, Ouija.
Basically, like the board gave itself the name.
Yeah, so maybe the board itself, well, which wouldn't be the board, it would be the other side.
Right.
I mean, the wanted this portal to be open.
Well, the allegation is that she made it up.
Right.
Anyway, but the whole reason I mentioned that is because the guy who eventually took over the Kennard novelty business or whatever, Fold, the board told him, allegedly, to build a factory. And it said, business will come, big business will come. So he built the factory, and when they were putting in the flagpole, he fell off the roof. I think we told that story, and died. But he made his family swear to never sell the Ouija company. And they didn't for 4 decades.
So the guy who built the factory that made Ouija boards mysteriously fell off the roof of the Ouija board factory after the Ouija board told him to build essentially his death plank.
Right. It was at the beginning of the mischief. But anyway,
creepy.
4 generations later, his family does eventually sell it to Parker Brothers. And then they move it to their home base in Salem, Massachusetts.
Really? Crazy.
And then 2 million copies are sold.
Which is interesting because most of the stories we've received, I would say the location that most often comes up from the stories we've received so far has been Massachusetts, which is just kind of weird from our own listeners.
So Jim was like, what if there's portals that are opening up from the manufacturing factories of Parker Brothers?
It's all real.
I wonder what the history of Parker Brothers is.
That's a good question. Oh, it was founded by a 17th century sorcerer developing magic wands. Not really. Oh, yeah. Before we begin, what is coming up on this episode, Jer? Break it down.
So we have a lot of really fascinating, terrifying, compelling, and several disturbing Ouija board stories, original stories, most of which are from our very own listeners, which I was surprised by the amount of stories we've received.
But all are allegedly true. Judge for yourself, discerning listener. And one very special submission from our good friend and master storyteller, Steve Stockton. So stick around to the end of the episode for that cherry on the top.
But yes, we've got some really, really fascinating ones, really creepy tales to get you in the Halloween spirit and maybe make you think twice before putting your pointy fingers on the planchette.
Yeah, I have a weird story quickly before we jump into the show.
Tell it.
This happened the other morning, actually. I ran into a neighbor, and she actually might be on the show at some point. She is a psychic medium. I'm not exactly sure the term that she would like to use, but...
Sensitive, maybe?
Sensitive, yeah. Someone that has had these experiences her whole life.
And she doesn't do this professionally, right?
No,
it's kind of
it's been like a lifelong thing where it just started, I think she can sense spirits visually in her mind is what I gathered. This was kind of a brief conversation. She might be listening, she might not, I'm not sure. I know that she had listened to a couple of our shows. She seems interested in coming on the show at some point, and it sounds like she's got a lot of interesting stories. She basically can see dead people wherever she goes.
Yeah, the question is, do you want to interview her after the freaky things you've already learned?
I know. I am nervous about that because this did unnerve me pretty much the first part of the day, all day.
Why don't you tell us about that? What that was like?
Yeah, that's what I was getting to.
Okay, sorry.
I live out in the country, kind of, and I was walking my dog in the morning. There's like a trail that runs near the property, and I knew her very lightly. That's not the right way to say that. She used to work where I would get Jake's food, my dog. And, I think I'd mentioned like, oh, hey, how's it going? We ended up talking about her dog and while we were on the trail, and it ended up getting to the point where I'm not even exactly sure how it started, to be honest. But we started getting more into the weird. I told her about the show, and that's when she kind of perked up and started to mention that she's had a lot of these experiences. She's a psychic. And, the conversation escalated. And, then she told me about, the fact that she can kind of see dead people wherever she goes. And then she mentioned that there is a spirit that wanders right around my house where the church is, right next door. She said that there was someone that was murdered, that was hung, there's like a big tree out front of the church, and that he was this really huge guy that would scare her, like run up to her and be like,
I know you can see me.
Oh, wow. That's freaky.
yeah, so this is right next to my house. So every time I see that tree now, it just, apparently he just like wanders around.
Yeah. A stuck spirit.
What really creeped me out was the story she told me that apparently there is a man that follows me wherever I go.
Yeah.
A guy that's taller than me, and I'm not super tall, but I'm kind of tall. And he's like, taller than me, super skinny, bald pattern, horseshoe-shaped, bald head, walks with a gait, so like big bow legs.
Lanky.
I think she said he had rickets too, and I didn't look that up, but I know it's kind of like an old-timey disease, but she said he looks lost.
Oh, sad.
And that he follows me. I mean, she says she always sees him following behind me, which
That's
is creepy as shit.
How did that make you feel?
Very unnerved. I mean, at least at first, I haven't thought about it in a couple days, but definitely, and I don't know, does he follow me into the house?
Yeah.
Because she just sees me when I'm just walking Jake around.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I could just picture Lanky Hanky standing over you.
Oh, yeah, his name starts with an H. She said that too.
Oh, okay.
And she also said, which is funny, she's like, no one's ever told you that before? I'm like, who would tell me that? Let alone if anyone could see him. Most people aren't going to walk up and be like, hey, you have a dead person following you around wherever you go.
Yeah, skulking over you as you walk down the trail. You said you've never had a negative feeling, so you'd imagine he's probably not a negative.
She said that he wasn't like a negative being. He just looked lost.
Well, you command such confidence,
yeah,
John.
I mean, I'm a bright light in a dark world.
There's a leader and he's following.
No, I don't know. Yeah, but it was still very unnerving.
He really enjoys Bitcoin YouTube videos. That's
I'm sure.
Yes. So what time are we getting together to do the Ouija board to talk to him at your house?
Oh, never a clock. She also did say she saw a large dogman-like creature. I kind of put that in her mouth because she said it was like a 7-foot tall creature that was chasing a rabbit across. She said her and her daughter saw it. That ran
crazy.
Across the road.
In the physical, like a real material
yeah,
thing.
right down where I live.
Yeah.
And I had said, have you ever heard of dogman? She's like, yeah, kind of like that.
Right at the mouth of the towpath, right?
I think so.
We need to get her to talk about that.
It's interesting.
That's super creepy.
That area has had, obviously we know that Silver Creek's not far and there's that famous Dogman account there, but also our friend who, through another friend, had seen the glowing green figure in the forest at a distance from the trail. That
Right. Yeah.
Almost exactly the same spot. So I wonder if there's some sort of,
she said in this area too, there's just, because it's such an old area, it's like she sees people everywhere. She said it's hard for her to leave.
Just lingering.
Because there's just so many spirits apparently that wander around.
It's such a fascinating thing to imagine, that old canal town that's now like this like kind of empty village, really, just like a main street.
I'm sure Canal Fulton is similar.
There's probably just like spirits everywhere wandering around.
Right.
There was so much with the coal boom and everything, and the canal boom, there was so much productivity and life there for a time, and also so much heartbreak, disaster, murders going on all the time. I mean, it'd be interesting to see what that would look like.
So hopefully we will have her on the show at some point, and she can talk more about that kind of stuff. I have a lot of questions about just mediums, psychics in general.
Yeah, me too.
And just the fact that, you have those experiences all the time. I'd like her thoughts on the afterlife and, stuff like that.
Fascinating.
So that was my story. Very strange for me because I don't usually I've had some weird stuff happen, but it's been a while since I've been like creeped out like that.
Yeah, it's a little unsettling.
Someone that's following me around.
Well, I hope Lanky Hanky's enjoying the show today. Yeah. He lurches behind you.
Well, yet another example of things around us all the time, waiting to communicate. Let's get into our first story.
Let's do it.
Let's start it off with, I thought, one of our most fantastic stories. This I would consider Jumanji-esque, I think is somewhat described in the story. This one is, well, let's just play it. This comes from a listener of the show, Farsam, who had previously sent in a story that was really good, and we didn't have time to do it on the last listener stories episode, but he did make mention in that story. Something like this may have all started when we were younger and had messed around with a Ouija board, but that's a story for another time. And I thought at the moment, I want to hear that story. So when we put this call out for Ouija boards, I wondered if he was going to send it in, and he did. So this is the story from Farsam.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Chris, John, Jeremy, thank you so much for these amazing episodes. The Belief Hole is my favorite podcast, hands down. I submitted a story to you guys before, and I kind of mentioned the Ouija board in one part of it. Submitted the story about the white thing in the backyard that scared the crap out of all my friends. The Ouija board is actually a big part of my life now because I messed around like an idiot and played with it when I was 12 years old. Me and my cousin We messed with it, and I'm pretty sure everything that has happened in my life is because we messed around with that Ouija board back then. I'm 34 years old now. So this was a long time ago, but I don't really talk about this because, first of all, it sounds like I'm making it up. Like, it sounds crazy because this kind of stuff doesn't happen outside of movies or TV shows. Like, my cousin will not talk to me about it. Like, if I bring it up, he craps himself. We just don't talk about it. But basically, story goes, his parents and my parents were out partying, whatever. It was like 10 or 11 at night, and this was, 22 years ago. So there wasn't much to do. We had like video games and stuff, but he had a Ouija board in the house. And this wasn't your typical Toys R Us Ouija board. This was something like out of Jumanji. Like, it was a wooden, thick board. It was old too. It looked like it was handcrafted or something. We're sitting there and we're playing with it and we're asking stupid questions, like 10 and a 12-year-old would. And something starts shaking, and we don't know if it's the board or like we just start looking around us as if it's one of the toys or games that he had in the basement at the time. And then it just stops and everything is silent. We turn around to look at the board, and at the exact same time we kind of like locked eyes because we were like, why is it so quiet right now? Everything went eerily silent, like we could hear our own heartbeat. As soon as that happened, it's as if somebody had yanked the board up. The thing shot up in the air and snapped in half. I shit you not, the board snapped in half in front of us, and it was loud. It was like a shotgun going off. My cousin immediately broke out into like a shrieking cry and ran the hell away. I was so scared, I was just sitting there. I didn't know what to do. I was looking around to see if something had caused it. If something fell from the roof, like a rock or something hit it, and I can't explain what happened. But it's as if somebody grabbed the Ouija board, picked it up, snapped it in half in front of us, and just walked away. I left and never went back to their house again. So we hang out at my place, or just out at a bar or something. But I don't know what happened to the Ouija board. He doesn't ever want to talk about it. I don't know if anything's happened to him and his family since then, but I could sit here for an hour and tell you the kind of stuff that's happened to me and my family after the events of that night. Yeah, still scares the hell out of me when I think about it. It's crazy. Most people probably wouldn't even believe me if I told them the story, but I figured the belief hole is the perfect place.
You picked the right place to go, sir.
I mean, that would be terrifying to see. I mean, it's so incredible, the idea of something being picked up in the air and broken in half. But it is interesting, too, because I've heard stories like this before where the board is broken, and there's a particular way you're supposed to dispose of a Ouija board. I don't know if there's any set rule.
Don't burn it.
Don't burn it.
Which I think I did.
No.
Over at the church next door.
You did?
I think
that makes a lot of sense now. Breaking, burning, it's almost like you guarantee, and like he said, this was kind of like a hallmark for how his life went on to be marked by this kind of experience, potentially, that this was the beginning. And there is something about the destruction of the board, the breaking open or the burning that apparently lets something loose. It's not the proper, like, you have to say goodbye when you end a session or you leave the door open. Well, there's also the board itself can contain or have attachments that when the physical object is destroyed, burned, or broken, it's like the entities or attachments are then allowed to
escape.
Exactly.
But he didn't break it. That's not fair.
It broke itself.
That's not fair.
But you invited it in. Potentially it has the power to do that.
It's interesting how old the board was too. Like,
yeah, I wonder where it came from. And if it was handmade, potentially.
It sounds like an artifact almost.
Well, and it could go back to Victorian times. The talking boards, pre-Parker Brothers.
The older, the better.
Exactly.
During the late 1800s with the spiritual movement, that's when they started to get really popular, because it was after the Civil War and almost, so many people had died. There was a lot of people just missing their brother, their dad, their husband.
Well, from that time period, the little planchette, long before the talking board, they used to have planchettes without the board. Did you know that? But they were larger and they were on casters. And instead of it pointing out letters on a board, it would have a pencil or some sort of marking device underneath. And you would basically automatic write with this giant planchette, which was French for little plank. But I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
So that has its roots in the Victorian era with the spiritualism going further back. So they basically combined it with the board.
The board's definitely more pragmatic.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Put some letters on there, you can just spell it out.
It makes it more dangerous because it's more readable. You know what letters for sure. It's not some bad script writing. But yeah, the breaking of the board, then there's the burning of the board, the problems with that. I don't know how many stories I've read where there's this odd attribute to the burning where so many people report hearing screaming when the board is burned. Whether that's entities screaming or spirits attached or the evil itself screaming. But a listener of ours, Hi Brazil, user on YouTube who follows the channel, apparently his cousin's friends allegedly burned their board. His cousins wouldn't play with it because they knew better. And when their friends burned the board after having crazy experiences with it, allegedly, screams coming from the fire. But that's I've heard multiple stories. I mean, we could do a whole episode on just these connections and corroborative accounts of what happens when you try to dispose of the board.
Yeah, that does seem very like Hollywood, screaming of the board. I wonder if it could be the paint.
Well, there's always, there's always, quote, rational explanations. But yeah, thank you so much for that story, Farsam.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So we're going to hear his other story at some point, you think, too?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Because that was also a really good story, but this was...
So this is kind of the thing that started it, right?
Yeah, we essentially played the prequel to the story first. But we'll do that in a future episode. Right now, let's get to another Ouija board story.
Yeah, so Heidi sent this in. We call it the nasty board. This story, this was a really great example of how things can go wrong, how you can be lured in.
The old switcheroo.
The temptation of the hidden knowledge being revealed, and how, especially as a younger child and not caring as much about the consequence, being tempted to continue talking to something that's giving you information that nobody else knows, that is being proven to be true. It seems like a superpower. So this is Heidi's account and how things can change over time using these tools. And this comes from, as you mentioned earlier, Jer, Massachusetts, one of our many Massachusetts submissions. And this took place in the 1980s.
Hi guys, I have got a Ouija board story for you. I was in middle school and my best friend's name was Michelle, and we somehow found a Ouija board. I guess she had a bunch of brothers and sisters, and I guess her parents had bought it for them at a toy store one year. And so one day we thought, well, let's play with the Ouija board and we can figure out which boys like us and who our future husband's going to be and silly things like that. So we started playing with the Ouija board, and it was, the usual slow moving from letter to letter. And I thought for sure that my friend was moving it, even though she swore she wasn't, and I knew that I wasn't. And it started giving us really accurate answers to the things that we asked. And so we became more and more addicted to it, and we started rushing to her house every day after school to play with the Ouija board in her room. And we would ask it questions like, is the boy I like going to talk to me at lunch tomorrow? And it would say, yes, he's going to sit with you, for example. And it would happen. And so all these strange things started happening. And so her parents started getting a little disapproving of how much time we were spending with the Ouija board. But we said, it's true. It's really telling us true things. It's giving us the answers. So we said to her father, have us ask it a question that there's no way that we could possibly know the answer to. And he said, okay, what was my first car? And the Ouija board spelled out Brown DeSoto. And you could just see the look of shock on his face. And my best friend didn't know that. Even his own wife didn't know what his first car was. And it answered correctly. So when that happened, her mother became a little alarmed and didn't really like us playing with the Ouija board anymore. So she threw it away in the trash. And none of those weird stories about it reappearing in the closet or anything like that. She threw it away and it stayed thrown away. But we didn't want to give up because we were having such success with it. So we decided to make our own Ouija board. So we got a piece of cardboard and we wrote everything, the yes and the no. We even drew the little sun and the moon. We had the numbers and the letters, and we knew which ones were on the top row and which ones were on the bottom row. And then we took a plastic cover to a blender top. And you know how they have those little, the piece of plastic in the middle? It's like a square. Well, we poked the piece of plastic out of the middle, and so we had a square piece of rubber with a circle in the middle. And we didn't think that it would work, but we put it on the board and we put our fingers on it, and sure enough, it started moving around the board. And even with the rubber instead of a planchette, it was still gliding around just as easily. And over time, the Ouija board started off, innocuous, but it's just started getting nastier and nastier, and the, quote, planchette that we had started moving faster and faster, and it would do this weird thing where we'd put our fingers on it, we'd ask a question, it would circle around the board so fast that I swear both of our fingers would come off of it, and it would continue moving because we just couldn't keep our hands on it. It moved so fast. And then it would go 6, 6, 6, and then it would answer the question. And that was the new pattern of what it would do. It would fly around the board, do 6, 6, 6, and then answer the question. So, of course, we started getting a little nervous about playing with it, but it was too much fun, and it was giving us all of this inside information on people. And so we kept playing with it. And then soon enough, it started spelling things out without us even asking a question. And it started calling us sluts and whores and saying, really nasty, vile things. And the last time we ever...
That sucks.
What? Yeah.
Cliffhanger.
Yeah. Her speak pipe ended, and we've been trying to get a hold of her to get the end of because the conclusion, I'm sure, is pretty interesting.
I mean, that leaves you right on the edge.
I know. So we'll see if she gives it to us by the ending of the post-production period. We can put it in.
You think the Ouija board is blocking our communication?
I don't think so.
That is weird.
But we'll see. We might have the ending of that. If not, we'll have to drop it, bring it to the show at some point. And I tell you, after the answer starts spelling out, beginning with 666, then immediately be like, okay.
Well, it's almost like that, giving over your will, or the evil itself, or things or people that represent evil have to tell you what they're doing in some small way. And it's kind of like, just so you know, you're now making a deal with me. That's kind of the feeling of it. You know that this is a culturally evil concept, the 666. So here's that, letting you know, would you like to continue? And they, because it's fun and you don't take it too seriously. But yeah, it moving around on its own. And the speed.
Yeah, I want to know, obviously, how the story ended, but did it affect her down the road, too?
That's what I want to know, too, yeah. How she dealt with it. A fascinating story. Well, thank you for that, Heidi. And definitely reach out if you hear this. We'd like to hear the rest of that and how you're doing now.
What's next?
This next story is really good. This story comes out of Plantersville, Texas, which is northwest of Houston. It took place in autumn of 2002. And this story is written very well to the point where I Googled Lynessa Layne, a listener of ours who sent it in. Turns out she's an author. She writes thrillers, I think...
is it romance novels?
Romance, thrillers, and that kind of thing.
Cool.
New York Times bestseller, which is awesome.
I feel honored.
Yeah, so when I read that, I was like, wow, this sounds like someone who really knows how to write. So when you read this, know that it is apparently a story that actually happened to her, but it's really well written because she is an author, so she used her skills to do that. Because sometimes I'll read stories that are so well written.
Yeah, it makes you question the reality.
Exactly. But apparently, she just happens to be an actual author. But this is a really good story.
All right, let's hear what happened to Lynessa. I knew better. I was raised to know. The Bible warns us never to interact with the spiritual realm. Demons desperate to be once more among the living fill our hopeful minds with tricks, while evil flirts with a human long enough to be invited in. Growing up in a God-fearing household, I'd known better. But junior high teens don't care about resisting temptation. And they're also invincible. Sleepovers were much more fun when my besties and I stopped gushing over crushes and began dabbling with unseen forces. Pencils, 3 each. Folded to make a U, we held them in our hands and touched both U's together. At times, nothing happened, and pencils were as lifeless as they were when coloring dots on a Scantron. Other times, the immediate pull on the wood connected like playing with magnets in science. Up, down, in, out. Sometimes opposing directions like a maybe to one of our stupid questions. The responses were so cool. My best of besties, Maria, and I would goof off, watch movies, music videos, have girl talk, but inevitably, the pencils came out. The pull got stronger, not on the pencils, the pull for more. Like being in a relationship with a boy who mystified you. You'd held hands, kissed, graduated to making out. But now he wanted to go beneath your shirt. Should you let him?
Let's make a board,
one of us suggested. I couldn't remember which. We were both nervous and excited about moving to spiritual second base.
Out of what? We don't have anything besides paper,
the other offered. We looked around her messy room, scattered with homework, makeup, clothing. But the best we could do was a piece of printer paper from her mom's stash.
If those pencils were good enough before, it should be able to do this.
While one of us sat about drawing letters like a Ouija board, the other found some cardboard and began cutting it into a triangle. The hole wasn't easy, and we'd had to bend the material to make a circle in the center. It had an ugly crease when we were done.
You think it's your grandma?
I asked her. She'd passed a few years back, and we'd felt like the pencils had provided guiding responses of the maternal type. Maria shrugged and reached across her bed for a scarf her grandmother knitted for her.
I don't know, but can we put this up here and find out? See if she can knock it down to give us a sign.
Maria smiled and reached on her tiptoes for a shelf over her bed. It was high, and she had to struggle to push the cloth about 10 inches back against the wall until the scarf looked like a purple snake settled in for a nap. She wiped her palms like she'd gotten dirty.
There. Candles?
Sure, good idea.
We lit 3 and placed them around the room, then turned out the lights. We sat across from one another, the makeshift joke of a board between us. The flimsy paper crinkled against the carpet, so we placed her math book beneath the sheet, then put 2 fingers from each hand to the cardboard we set in the blank space on the paper. Each of us released a breath in anticipation of the same familiar excitement. You want to ask the first question? She nodded and chewed her lower lip.
Is this you, Grandma?
Her voice was low enough that those in the living room watching TV wouldn't hear us. We looked down at our fingers and felt nothing at all. Our excitement dashed, like letting the air rush from a balloon.
Let's try again.
We adjusted our posture as if we meant business. What fools. But somehow, our demeanor did matter, because the vibe in the room shifted, like this quiet spirit now watched with a wicked smirk, thinking,
"Oh yeah? You want to play that game? Gladly."
"Is anyone here with us?" I asked. We sat with determination, our fingers feeling nothing for passing seconds as we stubbornly waited. Neither of us broke the silence. The candles flickered just a bit differently, enough to make us feel the change. Our eyes met like we'd succeeded at something, but we looked back at our unmoving fingers, only to realize they'd moved, and were moving still. Millimeter by tiny millimeter, we couldn't feel, crawling like the slowest of insects toward the yes we'd printed.
"I'm not doing that. Are you doing that?"
I asked her, almost willing her to be screwing with me.
No, girl, come on.
Our skin prickled with goosebumps at the same time, and my scalp felt like every strand of hair became needles.
Who is here with us? What is your name?
Maria asked, when we'd been patient enough to wait the 2-minute trip over the answer. We weren't foolish enough to get pissed at the spirit for taking so long. After all, we were interrupting their realm. Least we could do was be polite. Our eyes met once more, and we were anxiously excited. Again, when we looked down, our triangle was relocating, heading down at a snail's pace, holding us in suspense. I knew now, looking back, that the entity enjoyed control over us, like a meal for its starving belly. Never full, always hungry.
S,
we said together. We hyper-focused as the triangle began the tedious trip to another letter. The candle sparked, but our absorption was on the A. We announced at the next finish line. Do you know anyone with those letters so far? I asked. Because I don't. She looked far away in her mind, digging for anything we could spin into a connection. Add a T to that. SAT. The triangle crawled away while we sought a name we knew, but nothing.
Oh my gosh!
Maria gasped.
Look!
Goosebumps didn't have jack on our horrifying dawning. The triangle rolled over the A and got too close to the N for our liking. Unable to keep going, we ripped our hands from the cardboard.
Hell no.
Was only one of the things we sputtered in our panic. At once, all 3 candles extinguished in a sudden gust of chilled air. Maria and I lunged into each other's arms. 3 hard, loud knocks sounded, rock solid on the door, like the spirit had come for a foreboding visit. The hell we were calling the entity by its spelled-out name. That was only in the Bible, right? Turn on the lights! Hurry! I cried. We scrambled together, unwilling to untangle in the dark. The board crunched beneath our feet. And she fumbled for the switch that blessedly illuminated the room in an instant relief. We clung together at the foot of her bed, catching our breath. We looked over in unison to see the scarf lying on her pillow.
Let's get out of here.
I nodded in agreement. We released each other and jolted for the door. I wrapped my arms over my chest, unable to get warm enough, even though East Texas in autumn is still in the 90s. We could have jumped in her pool in the front yard right now if we wanted, but I needed a coat. If the country wasn't pitch black after the sun went down, the outside heat would have been soothing. We tried not to run into the living room so her parents wouldn't know anything was wrong.
Did anyone knock on my door just now?
Maria demanded, probably a little disrespectful. Her parents looked up like they hadn't realized we'd come into the room. Then they looked like we were crazy and shook their heads. If we tried to sleep on the floor out there, they'd know something was wrong. We never hung around them unless they forced us to. We lingered in the shallow hallway, looking at her partially open door. The light was still on, innocent enough. Yet now her room seemed nothing like the one we'd always played makeup and nail salon in. Now that door looked like a sneaky beast was beckoning from behind it with a curling claw.
Come here, little girls. I won't hurt you. Want some candy? Just a little closer.
Though we'd been inseparable for years, after that night, things were never the same between us. A lot of drama distracted us. We hurt one another in ways that were unthinking and two-faced. Until now, I'd never connected the cause. Though we'd burned that board and never picked up another set of pencils, the damage was done. The evil was there, and the spirit didn't need us to reach out to it any longer. We'd invited the vampire in to take its meal over a long period of time. As I looked into the mirror of my new bathroom, 3 inexplicable scratches marred my armpit, and I knew, even now, 20 years into adulthood, that evil spirit still followed me wherever I went. Dabbing ointment on the most recent attack, I thought of Maria, and couldn't help wondering what kind of attacks she still had to contend with as well.
What a story. That's such a thing you hear, the wrecking of relationships, the darkness that follows, opening this door, not prepared for it, whether you can be at all. There's this potential for something to just...
We have 2 other stories like that where it seems to really distance people.
Yeah, like it seems to feed off the trauma and the separation, the breaking apart of relationships and families.
It seems like that's what demons like to do, or dark spirits like to break people apart.
Hey, demons got to eat, right? It's just demon food.
Starve your ghouls. We say it a lot.
Starve your ghouls, people.
That one part to me stood out too, where they're looking back at the door, that room that used to be just a room that they spent so much time in, and now it's just reminded that feeling that we experienced, that heavy sensation, like reality just around you, the atmosphere just changes.
Yeah.
It just feels different. Yeah, interesting story.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Lynessa Layne. Great story. Well written. So Heidi's story came in. She got my message.
Hey, we got an ending to Heidi's story.
It is here.
The end of her harrowing tale.
The conclusion.
Let's hear it up.
Hi guys, this is Heidi again, part 2. I am so sorry that I didn't send this to you sooner. Time just got away from me, and I hope you get the rest of this in time for your recording because it stopped right before the best part.
Glad she's okay.
So my best friend and I were using the Ouija board that we made ourselves with the blender top. We're sneaking around using it because we used it at my friend's house and her mother didn't want us to use it anymore. And it started, the planchette, quote, planchette blender top started flying around the board. And again, it would go 666 really fast, and then it would start spelling things out. And it would circle so fast we couldn't even keep our fingers on it. And, well, the last time we played with the board, it said, Satan rules Heidi and Michelle and dead people. And it spelled out that sentence with lightning speed.
That's not terrifying.
Yeah, right.
And my best friend and I took our fingers off the planchette and just stared at each other in shock and terror and ripped up the cardboard board that we had made with cardboard and Sharpie and put the blender top back on the blender. And well, I don't know about her, but never touched a Ouija board again for the rest of my life. I have told my kids about this story. I have warned them to never, ever touch a Ouija board. I believe it is some sort of portal to something evil. And once you open it up, sometimes I think there's no way to close it. And some weird stuff happened to me after I stopped using the Ouija board. Weirdest thing is I was home alone. There was a thunderstorm. My parents were at work. It was probably a couple months, maybe a month after we stopped using the Ouija board, and I was putting some makeup on it, my makeup mirror, lighted makeup mirror, and I reached up and kind of scratched my forehead, and I looked down. There was just a little bit of blood on the tips of my fingers, and I thought, what's that? I thought maybe I scratched a mosquito bite or something. So I lifted up my bangs and I looked, and there on my forehead, top of my forehead on the hairline, was a perfect 6 in blood. And of course it scared the bejesus out of me. And I went to an aunt of mine who was an extremely devout Christian, born-again Christian, and I asked her to do a ritual, pray over me and all of that kind of thing. And she did. And nothing else ever happened again, knock on wood. But the moral of that story is, you're contacting something when you use a Ouija board, and maybe it's something that's better left alone. So anyways, you guys are awesome. Best paranormal podcast by far. Thanks. Bye.
That is terrifying.
Yeah. Ugh. Crazy. Heavy stuff, man.
She's right, though. Yeah, you don't know what you're getting on the other side.
That's the second.
That would be scary as a kid, too. That would be awful.
Oh, dude. Traumatizing.
Yeah.
It's the second Satan one we had in there. He's a busy guy. Even if it's not the Satan. I mean, it's obviously something dark that wants to freak you out. Yeah.
Well, and then the etching of the 6 on her forehead, that's pretty dark, dude.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's where the mark of the beast goes, right? Isn't it on the forehead? That's true. I didn't even think about that. Biblically speaking, anyway? Yeah, whatever it is.
Freaky. That's definitely the most vicious one that we had, story-wise.
I'm just glad it didn't mess up her entire life. You know?
I know.
Interestingly, Heidi actually followed up in her email with a little anecdote that I found pretty compelling, which explains that she's still friends. She's been friends with this girl for the last 40 years or so. And apparently she's asked her multiple times whether or not she was moving the planchette, whether it was all a practical joke on her. She said she even asked her after her friend had been drunk, in vitae veritas, where she may have told the truth with the influence of alcohol. But even then, she always claimed that she was just as scared as she was and freaked out. She's never admitted to this in 40 years that she was the one moving the planchette. So if she wasn't moving the planchette and Heidi wasn't moving the planchette, and it wasn't a micro movement of the psyche, then who was? Creepy stuff.
Yeah, creepy and compelling.
I was actually I wanted to record some actual Ouija board sounds, but
really?
I'm not going to.
There you go. We got a board right here.
We can just get a Monopoly board and use the planchette.
I know, it'd be the same thing, sound-wise.
Every scraping of that, a spirit would release.
And then it would catch in the microphone some EVPs of evil.
Ooh, maybe that's how you get EVPs. It's like a scratch and sniff. You take the planchette.
It's dumb.
That was as bad as my Ed joke.
In the expansion.
Yeah, but that was kind of creative, right?
No.
Okay.
Anyways.
I did my best. Well,
yes, thank you for sending the rest of that in.
Yeah, thanks for letting us know you're okay, Heidi, and the Ouija board did not
consume you.
And thank you for the lovely compliment.
Yeah, it was very sweet. Yeah, great stories today. Well, I think it's a good time to cleanse ourselves.
And before we cleanse,
yes,
hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button.
Yes, looking at you on YouTube right now.
If our content gives you value and you like us, do us a favor. Hit the like.
We really appreciate it.
That was so polite and almost clinical. If our content gives you value.
It's definitely more of like what an educational channel would say.
I like it. I like it with a button click.
Well, before we go to break, Chris, what's coming up in the expansion today? For members only, the expansion episode.
Yeah, you don't want to miss this one. This one is going to be fun. It's going to be a breath of fresh air from this darker episode. There will be some spookiness in the expansion.
Well, we got to stay spooky. It's the spooky season.
That's right. But there is going to be, I call this Little Haunt on the Prairie. Cowboys, Freaks, and Phantoms. So this is going to be really fun. A lot of adventure.
Cowboys versus demons?
Maybe. You'll have to listen to find out. We'll be sharing true tales of Headless Riders. Ooh. And one incredible story I found of a Civil War colonel who claimed to have a run-in with 3 inhuman beings in the desert.
Otherworldly.
Yes, otherworldly. Pretty cool story. And we're going to revisit an old friend, Coulter, who was the first European to come across the mind-bending vista of what would become Yellowstone National Park.
Oh, that's right.
So we're going to tell a really crazy story about an escape he had out in the mountains that nearly cost him his life. And we'll be talking about some camel stuff.
Camel stuff?
Yes, and red ghosts. It's going to be pretty incredible. Oh, and the Gowrow. That was a story you found, Jared.
We're going to wrap it up with a original recording. I think never fully told before, the original newspaper account, because I had to find it and transcribe it myself, of the herring battle of this giant beast, dinosaur-esque creature, now legendary in the land of Arkansas, the Green Gowrow.
Yes, it's going to be fantastic.
A weird Wild West ride.
So if you're looking for adventure into the strange and into the Wild West, you're going to want to sign up for the expansion because we're going to be doing that.
How do you sign up for the expansion, Chris?
Oh, good question. If you want to sign up for the expansion, there'll be links in the show notes here, but you can also go to beliefhole.com and click on the big red Join the Expansion button. And that will take you to our members-only site where we have just as many rich and wonderful episodes as we do on our main feed over there on the expansion, just waiting for you.
So you basically get double the episodes.
Absolutely.
Full length, fully produced.
Yes. So here's a quick clip from today's expansion episode.
We'll see you after the break.
Amen.
Amen.
Access granted.
Were it not for the fact that I was not alone when I witnessed the strange sight, I would have never mentioned it at all. Wednesday afternoon, I went out to Lodi and Lockeford in company with Camille Spooner, a young man recently arrived from Nevada. I went to the places mentioned in quest of material to form an exhibit to represent this county at the Fresno Citrus Fair. We left Lodi on the return trip, should judge shortly before 6 o'clock, and we were jogging along quietly when the horse stopped suddenly and gave a snort of terror. Looking up, we beheld 3 strange beings. They resembled humans in many respects, but still they were not like anything I had ever seen. They were nearly, or quite 7 feet high and very slender. We were both somewhat startled, as you may readily imagine, and the first impulse was to drive on. The horse, however, refused to budge, and when we saw that we were being regarded more with an air of curiosity than anything else, we concluded to get out and investigate. I walked up to where the strange-looking persons were and addressed them. I asked where they were from. They seemed not to understand me, but began, well, warbling expresses it better than talking. Their remarks, if such you would call them, were addressed to each other, and sounded like a monotonous chant, inclined to be guttural. I saw it was no use to attempt a conversation, so I satisfied myself with watching and examining them. They seemed to take great interest in ourselves, the horse and buggy, and scrutinized everything very carefully. Welcome back, divers deep of the hole.
Divers deep. Yes, welcome in. Splashy splash.
Swim where the waters are warm.
Hope you got your candles lit and your salt displayed on the floor.
Are those lanterns actually lit?
No, aren't they really realistic LEDs?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
They're flamey LEDs.
I want to get more.
They look like old lanterns that are being powered by whale oil.
Well, yeah.
Whale blubber. Soon you guys will see our flashy lanterns in our new studio. Soon, I tell you.
Live stream.
It's a cool space.
It very is. It very is.
Old space. 1876. Pick up sticks.
We did tell them it was a Model T place, right?
Mm-hmm.
They used to sell Model T Fords out of this space. Just so weird to think about.
Yeah, there must have been a wall not there at one point. I'd have to have it be open
to fit them all in here. Yeah.
Anyway,
strange and mysterious place.
We couldn't have done it without you guys, though.
That's
Thank
true.
you for listening.
Thank you to the listeners.
Making our dreams come true.
Giving the whole a home.
Yes!
Well, back to our Ouija board, the world of the Ouija. It can definitely be a dangerous thing.
We've established that.
But even in a matter of law.
More law? Bird law?
We got some bird law here. No, just an interesting anecdote. Did you know, John, that the Ouija board was once used to convict someone?
No.
What do you mean, like the jury used it?
Apparently there was a hung jury, pun intended. This was like 1994. A guy by the name of Stephen Young was on trial. And they couldn't decide, and a handful of the jurors stayed up late at night after everyone else went to bed, used a makeshift board and an upside-down glass of wine for the planchette.
What?
And supposedly they got in contact with the person who was killed.
The victim?
They asked him who did it, and he spelled out, Stephen Young done it. And they said, how should we find tomorrow the verdict? And he came back, allegedly, saying, find him guilty. And they did. And this didn't come out until months after the trial closed.
Oh, crazy. Was he acquitted?
No, I'm not exactly sure, but it led to like the biggest trial of jury misconduct.
Oh, yeah.
Up until that time. Because, essentially you're consulting with the spirits to figure out if this guy's guilty or not, and then go with that. And who knows who you're talking to? It might not have been the victim. I just thought that was really interesting. That was back in 94.
1994?
Yeah.
That's bizarre.
I feel like that'd be like 1810.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, right?
Crazy.
Over in Britain land. Crazy stuff.
What was our next story?
This is a rather sad story, and it follows in line with the through line we've been hearing about the darkness, the separation, the things that can happen. This is called It Stole My Sister, and our listener who wrote in shared the story with us. We know her name, but she wishes to remain anonymous. This also comes from Massachusetts, home of the
there it is.
Ouija board company, oddly enough.
The occulted Parker Brother Company.
This occurred over a period of years.
This is the first and most likely last time I will ever tell this story. I've always been fascinated by the occult and how mysterious the world around us can be. So one Christmas when I was a teenager, my father gave me a Ouija board as a present. I wasn't very interested in the thing, honestly, but my younger sister was. She ended up stealing it and going off and using it by herself. She was only a kid at the time, so she didn't know better, and I didn't believe they were as dangerous as people say. It started as little things. An object would go missing, and we'd tear up the apartment, looking only to find it in the middle of a room we had previously searched. My sister began to have nightmares and express fear. I thought she was just being a little kid with an imagination. She would go stay at her dad's house on the weekends. Since my room was in the basement, it would get cold, and I would go sleep in her room when she was gone. One night, I settled down on her bed and began to doze off, when suddenly, I was woken up by scratching and banging from the inside of her closet. I laid there for minutes, listening and trying to process what was happening. That's when I noticed she had barricaded the closet, so whatever it was couldn't get out. Needless to say, I went back to my basement room to sleep. This entity terrorized my sister to the extreme, and when I look back, I can't help but blame myself for having the board in the first place. My mom tried hanging crosses on her door, hanging dream catchers, and most regrettably, she broke the board in two and threw it away. My sister would tell me she would hear someone crying and walking around late at night in the basement. I never heard or saw it. Eventually, we grew up and both went our own ways, but the entity never left my sister alone. We used to be so close, to an unheard of extent in siblings. We never fought. When my grandmother passed, we inherited her home, the house we grew up in. I saged and purified the space, but before I did, I could sense something was trying to work its way in. Then my twins were born, and I made sure that thing could not come anywhere near my home. I decided I wanted to help my sister and rid her of it because of my guilt, but I knew I couldn't unless she was ready and really wanted to. The thing started going to my sister as my grandmother and telling her lies to pull us apart. It used our dysfunctional, narcissistic living family members and my sister's fear to pull us apart, and now we no longer speak. She doesn't know my children. She's met them once since they were born. They just started kindergarten. I am full of regrets and sadness because before my kids, she was everything to me. And I keep picturing the beautiful little girl she was. And I can't even put into words the pain of losing her and seeing her become a different person. Since the cleansing, the demon has only come once to me in a dream to taunt me about its success in convincing my sister that it is indeed my grandmother reaching out to her from beyond. I was able to protect myself and my little family, but I also failed her. I know it wouldn't change my mind back when I was oblivious, but please, please do not use Ouija boards. Opening up that gateway with an invitation was my biggest regret. I lost one of my best friends, and that hole is felt every day.
Very sad.
I mean, yeah, it just seems to separate people.
And you can't blame yourself if you're listening right now, Anonymous. Obviously, you're young, you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Well, it's also, she didn't convince her sister to play with the board. Her sister found the board.
That's true.
It was a gift given to her. It's not like she really pursued having her sister get involved. So I'm just saying, like, I don't know. If I would give any advice to say, I would say don't give up hope. Hopelessness is what the darkness wants. Hopefully one day you can reconnect with your sister.
It's just crazy how it can affect someone for so long. You know, how it can change the trajectory. We've heard that a lot, you know, like even from the first story, Farsam, is like, this has defined his life in a lot of ways. It seemed to open the door on a lot of other experiences and just opens that portal and just kind of thought, maybe I did when I was younger. That's where Hank came from.
Lanky Hank.
Lanky Hank. I don't know.
Following you around now. That's the thing I think a lot of people think at the time, and we've done this before, you know, on an impromptu evening with friends, and maybe you had some drinks or it's Halloween or something. You're like, it's a one-night thing. That's what you're thinking. It's a one-night experience. We're going to do this thing. Not thinking like, oh, there might be a lingering darkness for years.
Right.
Decades.
Yeah.
You can't give up hope. That's the hardest thing, I think, too, is like people that go through the trauma and the lingering darkness that follows them into adulthood. You know, it doesn't want you to be hopeful or optimistic or believe that you can have a good life. That's the point. So you have to fight against that feeling if you can.
Yeah. I mean, the hard part is when it's not directly she can do anything about it.
Right. I mean, other than, you know, try to not lose hope.
No, I know. But like, because it's involved someone else, it's got to be difficult.
Well, yeah, for sure.
Anyways, yeah. So don't play with the Ouija board.
Yeah.
On this Halloween. Unless you're prepared to suffer the
I
consequences.
think that would be our official Belieful advice.
Rolling the dice.
It's fun to talk about, but it's not fun to live with the rest of your life.
Well, thank you for sharing that intimate story.
Absolutely.
You know, speaking of creepy Ouija board stories with siblings, Chris, you shared a story earlier about your ex-girlfriend and that unsettling experience where the atmosphere shifted. My very first girlfriend, Angie, I didn't know that she had a super disturbing Ouija board experience growing up. Yeah. Apparently she used to play with her sisters and her brother when she was like 7 or 8 years old. And the last time they did it, their baby brother, who had died during childbirth, appeared in the vanity mirror.
Crazy.
Which is super unsettling.
That'll stick with you.
Yeah. That was the last time she's ever touched one.
Yeah.
But that's just crazy. I feel like everyone...
If you haven't had an experience, you probably know somebody who has.
Exactly. And yeah, I wonder how many people we know that we've just never heard their stories.
Yeah.
Tons of just strange little anecdotal, disturbing stories like that out there.
Yeah. Well, what do we have next?
Should we do it? Ghetto Girl Gets Ghosted?
Sure. This next one is called Ghetto Girls Get Ghosted. Ghetto Girls Get Ghosted.
We can't say that.
It's a fun title. She just happened to describe the apartment that they lived in was in a kind of ghetto. So this story comes from Anna and takes place in Fresno, California.
Yeah, this is interesting.
Very interesting tale that involves Hmong shamanism.
That's the group of people that had where the origin of Freddy Krueger came from. Remember, we told that story many times. I'm not going to tell it again, but Google it if you're interested.
They were stricken with that sleeping disease, right?
Yes, death in mid-sleep.
Yeah. Anyways, this is a great story.
I just found Belief Hole like 2 weeks ago. I joined your Patreon today and saw your call for stories. Maybe it's time to talk about a few things. So here it goes, my only experience with a Ouija board. When I was 12 years old, I found myself sitting in front of a paper version of the Ouija board at around 6 p.m. at night. We were too poor to buy a board, plus we were literally 12 years old, so one of the girls drew the Ouija board on a piece of paper and we used a coin as the thing that moves around. I honestly don't know what it's called. I remember this happened close to Halloween because we were all talking about our costumes. Someone wanted to be a cheerleader, someone wanted to be Britney Spears, and I wanted to be a ninja. Then, one girl started talking about spooky shit. I have never liked talking about ghost stories because I've always had experiences growing up. At the time, I didn't know if it was because of the houses we lived in or because I was not normal. Spoiler alert, I was not normal. One girl, I'm going to call her Leader Girl, then brought up the haunted house that was right next door to our apartment complex. It was important to note that I recently just moved to the apartment complex. Apparently, some guy died in that house next door. Possibly had killed himself, and although no one lived in the house at the time, things would happen. Lights would turn on at night. People could hear a vacuum or water running when there was none. And sometimes, you would hear what sounded like rummaging around the house, as if someone was in there. If you're wondering, how can you hear rummaging in the house from the next door? We lived in California. Our apartment complex literally loomed over the house because, land is not cheap. It could also be homeless people or squatters. I'm not sure. Anyways, someone else started talking about the haunted house. And then Leader Girl had this great idea to use the Ouija board to contact the guy that supposedly died in that house. Personally, I thought it was stupid and terrifying all at the same time. First off, how can you just summon a ghost? And second, why? I need to state that I am Asian, and in my culture, our belief is shamanism. Our religion specifically teaches us not to try to communicate with spirits unless you are a shaman and/or have been trained to do so. Opening up that door between us and spirits is a huge no-no. I was scared when the girls wanted to do this, but I was also semi-new to the apartment, so I didn't want to chicken out, so I stayed. When the paper Ouija board was made, we took it to the grassy area in the middle of the apartment. The grassy area is this little bowl in the ground where a pool should have been, but probably because the builder had no money, it just sat empty, and over time, grass grew on it. It actually feels like a little green park in the middle of our super ghetto apartment. It was nice. It was after 6 p.m. because I had just had dinner and it wasn't too dark out yet. We placed the paper Ouija board on the ground and Leader Girl started explaining how to play the game. I think this was probably the first time I really learned about what a Ouija board was. Anyways, we all put our index finger on the coin, and Leader Girl led most of the questioning. It started out with, "Is anyone there?" And the coin didn't move. She continued to ask more things like, "Are there ghosts in here? Is the apartment haunted? Is the house next door haunted?" Nothing really happened. I remember saying that I had to go home, and Leader Girl told me that I couldn't go. I had to ask permission from the board to go home. I thought it was kind of stupid. I'm going to ask for a piece of paper to go home? I just rolled my eyes and said, "Okay." We all asked the board if we could go home. Our fingers were still hovering over the coin. We were told not to touch the coin, but to have our finger over it, when suddenly it moved to no. I looked up and noticed all the girls looking at each other. It was one of those, "Did you move it" looks? Leader Girl said, "Why can't we go home?" And after a short pause, the coin moved around the board. It said, "House." I was confused and said, "We can't go home because of our house?" The coin then moved again and spelled out, "My house." Leader Girl blurted out that it must be the house next door. She then asked, "Are you the ghost from next door?" And the coin moved to, "Yes." At this point, I felt like the Leader Girl was trying to freak us out because another girl, Scaredy Cat Girl, pulled her finger back and screamed that she wanted to go home. Leader Girl told her she can't because the ghost from the next door wants to talk to us. The other girls looked at each other and just made these faces like they were enjoying it. Scaredy Cat Girl got up immediately and said she was done. Leader Girl blurted out that if she left, the ghost from next door will get her. The other two girls started to giggle. I wanted to leave too, so I quietly said that I wanted to go home. I told them I needed to go wash dishes. Leader Girl, with her other two homies, looked at each other and started laughing. They pointed at Scaredy Cat Girl and I, saying that we were such crybabies. As they laughed at us, I had this odd feeling wash over me. It was a combination of goosebumps, but with heat rising to my face. Note that October in the Central Valley is still relatively hot. There was no wind in the air that evening, so when this wind swept into the bowl of grass, everyone went quiet. It was almost like when someone blows out a candle. It immediately got darker in that bowl of grass. We all looked at each other, and then back at the paper. Although this wind had blown into the bowl, the Ouija board, which was literally made out of paper, did not move. It was eerily quiet. We live in a 20-plus unit apartment complex close to a train track. This was literally a mini Asian village with everyone always out and about, being in each other's business. Our apartment complex is never quiet. Scaredy Cat Girl was the first to run out of the bowl. Then the other girls all took flight. I don't know why, but my feet were glued to the ground. I noticed Leader Girl was still here, and she had this look of fear in her eyes. Her mouth was shut, but she looked like she was trying to say something. Another gust of wind blew into the bowl, and the paper flew up off the ground. And as if we were both released from the ground, we ran. As I ran up out of the bowl, the noise from the neighbors filled my ears, and the lights in the apartment units lit up the evening. My apartment unit was not too far from the bowl, and as soon as I got in through the door, I slammed it. My brother was playing games on his Nintendo 64, and my mom was in the kitchen. All the lights were on. She saw me and immediately yelled at me. 1, for slamming the door. 2, for not washing the dishes after dinner. I ran to her and hugged her, thinking she'd save me from whatever happened. She confusingly asked me if I was okay. I just hugged her tighter. That night, I slept in the same bed as my mom, and had a dream of an older white man. He was wearing brown corduroy jeans and a flannel button-up shirt. He looked disheveled and unhappy. He just looked at me like he was disappointed with me and walked away. After a few days, we found out that leader girl was sick. Then a few days after that, I heard the sound of a drum coming from her apartment unit. She lived in an upstairs unit, 2 doors down from me. I walked over and saw her front door open. I knew this sound. I also knew this familiar smell of incense. It was a shaman ceremony. I never confirmed if it was her, so it could have been something else. All I know is that we never talked about it, and I stopped playing with her and the 2 other girls. Scaredy Cat Girl moved away, and I became friends with other girls in the complex who weren't into Ouija board initiation. Of course, we can chalk it up to coincidences, but I can't explain how a paper doesn't move when a gust of wind comes through, or how a small space can get darker and quieter. How can a relatively healthy person get sick for days after such an experience? Maybe we stayed out too late and she caught a cold. Maybe it's all in our minds. It won't be until much later on in my adult life that I will be taught how to manage and deal with my experiences. Also, the house has been demolished, and the land still sits vacant.
Quite a story, Anna.
Yes, indeed.
But I'm glad you found the hole, and thank you for sharing that creepy and very interesting story.
Yeah. Very unique. The bowl.
Like you said, it leaves a little bit of question. You're not totally sure.
Was it in our minds?
Right. But definitely some weird anomalies with the wind and not moving the makeshift board.
Yeah, that and how the bowl that they were in, where they were using this makeshift board, how she said everything grew darker and silent.
And silent, yeah.
And then when they seemed to be broken free from that sort of position, the place became alive with activity and light again.
Yeah.
Which is just reminds you that atmospheric shift.
I think, didn't Farsam say the same thing at the beginning, that everything got dark and quiet?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know if he said dark, but
very quiet.
Things got super quiet.
Yeah.
I think there was another one too that said something like that. There's some kind of like energy shift where things get quieter and
yes, that change in atmosphere.
Also interesting dream.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you could chalk it up to
that could be subconscious,
or it could be the man in the house they're trying to contact.
Well, obviously that's
right. That's what it was. I have decided it.
I wonder what other experiences she had, because it sounds like this has been a lifelong thing too, and that she later learned how to deal with this stuff
She
better.
has submitted another story through SpeakPipe that we might do on a future episode.
Oh, cool.
More in that apartment, right?
Yeah.
Sounds like an interesting place to grow up.
The haunted apartment complex.
Mm-hmm.
Well, welcome to the hole, and I'm glad you found us.
Yeah, we'll have a picture in the show notes that she sent of the actual vacant lot where it now sits.
It still stands vacant. That's interesting.
Still vacant.
I think we have a very special last story, don't we?
Yes, our final story of the day comes from the master storyteller and author, Steve Stockton, good friend of the show.
Yes, and he's got some good words of wisdom in here from his mother, who actually grew up, if you heard our other episode with Steve, she grew up around the time of the spiritual movement. So her whole life, she had experiences with talking boards and with seances. And so Steve, through her, learned a lot as a young child. And Steve himself had the call, or that sort of thing. His grandmother believed that he was touched, and she had the same sensitivities. He has some thoughts on that as well, and you'll hear in the story.
It's a great way to, I think, bookend this edition of our Ouija Board Horror Stories Anthology.
Hello. Steve Stockton here with you. I was asked by the brothers to share one of my Ouija board stories. Now, I'm sure a lot of you have played with a Ouija board or any other type, talking board or mystifying oracle. Although I haven't had what I would consider a lot of experience with the board, I have used them and have been around where they were used almost constantly and to some degree of accuracy. Some people love them, some people are afraid of them, and others still laugh at what they consider the user's naivete and gullibility. Regardless of your opinion, I'll bet each of you have at least one story regarding the Ouija. Now, I was drawn to this type of thing as a small child, and I can remember my mother taking me to Woolworths in the old downtown Oak Ridge shopping center. I'd been sick that day, we'd gone to get prescriptions filled, and she offered to buy me a toy. I remember seeing the board on the shelf. It was the old style, with the hooded figure on a dark background, and I was fascinated by it. Sure enough, my mother bought it for me, and I rode home with it sitting in my lap. We took the board home, and my mother showed me how to use it. Now, my mother was no stranger to communicating with the other side. As a young girl in the 30s, her family took part in the spiritualism movement from around the turn of the last century. She often took part in seances, table tapping sessions, and yes, Ouija board sessions. Those first sessions, I was amazed to feel the planchette moving beneath our fingertips. I at first thought my mother must be touching it, but I also recall that sometimes it would spell foreign words that she would have to look up the meaning of later on. Some of my first questions reflected my tender age. I was all of 5. When would the first snowfall happen this year? How much snow would we get? What was I going to get for my birthday? For Christmas? I delighted in watching the talking board spelling out many words that I didn't know, despite being precocious. I knew how to read at a 3rd grade level and had an extensive vocabulary, although I was only a kindergarten student. My mother also explained the cautionary side of playing with the board. There were certain questions you must never ask, such as, when and how will I die? And when will the end of the world take place? Those two I distinctly remember being sternly forbidden. She also stated that I must never play with the board alone, nor should I invite anything contacted via the board to join us on this plane of existence. These types of warnings and thoughts made me more than a little apprehensive, and while I would often think about the consequences just to scare myself, I obeyed her rules and never took the board lightly or asked any of the questions that I had been instructed not to ask. I can remember another occasion when there was a particular phonograph record that I wanted desperately, but my parents had been unable to locate it. I asked my mother to help me consult a Ouija, and sure enough, it gave us the name of a somewhat obscure record shop in downtown Knoxville. My mother called the shop. Back then, calling Knoxville from Oak Ridge was long distance, and the gentleman on the other end of the line said he would look and see. Well, I thought, there goes that. But sure enough, a couple hours later, he called back, and surprisingly enough, he had found the very album of circus music that I so desperately desired in his stock in the back. It was an out-of-print album, having been printed in the 50s. I'd heard it at kindergarten in the 60s. My mother had the man set it aside for us, and then later that week, we went and purchased it after having lunch at Cress's in Knoxville. I was beginning to see the Ouija as a very useful tool, even at such a young age. This was when my mother let me know that too much Ouija could be a bad thing, and that relying on it for everyday decision-making would surely lead to a dire situation. So she put the Ouija board in the top of her closet, and once again it became a treat or something to use under special circumstances where help from beyond the veil was deemed necessary. Looking back, I'm very thankful that she taught me to use the talking board in moderation. As an adult, I've met those who have had their mind and their very life consumed by the Ouija, usually having been drawn to the dark side, which is easier than one might think. Sure, it starts out innocently enough, like me as a child, fascinated with the oracle and asking it a million inane questions, growing bolder and bolder each day. But when it gets to the point of not being able to make any decision without the Ouija, or tarot cards, or the zodiac, or star chart, or runes, or the I Ching, or any number of systems of divinity, I think one risks becoming a slave to the practice. By setting limits, I use the Ouija and other tools responsible. Nowadays, I stay away from the Ouija board in general, but I do not fear them. Like anything of an occult nature, I feel it only has the power over you that you give to it. While I would never tell anyone not to use a talking board, I wouldn't recommend the use of one either. To each his or her own. But use your due diligence and caution. Otherwise, I might end up writing about you in one of my future books of spooky stories.
Thank you for that,
That's
Steve.
a good point, Steve.
And Steve leaves us with a little bit more of a balanced look at it.
Yes.
As far as, it'll be interesting to hear people's comments that, you know, where it's lasted their whole lives on it, what they would say about that.
Yeah, I've heard both. And I've heard, as we mentioned at the very beginning of the episode too, I've heard people write in saying, I've had experience with the board, or I'm a medium, or I know how to use this correctly. I've heard that, especially from comments on other episodes we've done, which I think can be possible. But for me, again, it is a roll of the dice.
And I think if you're going to use it at all, moderation is definitely the way. Rare to never.
Well, it does seem like it has like a sticky presence where it kind of ropes you in, you know,
That's
and the
a good way
more
to
you
put it,
use
gravity.
it just wants you to use it more.
It's a temptation.
Right.
Especially anytime you're going to get knowledge that nobody else has.
Right.
And it keeps proving to be true. It does feel like a superpower.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, it kind of, I mean, it's definitely supernatural, you know?
Divining. How did Steve put it? Not giving your will to it, but as far as giving yourself over to it or having...
He's kind of said,
if you'd lean
as
on
much as you believe in it, almost sort of thing. Like
the power over you.
He doesn't fear it anymore.
It's kind of like it.
Yeah. Well, I do
there it is. It took all the episode to get there, but there it is.
It's like it. Yeah, definitely. I feel like with anything occult or divining or anything, that there is something about, even we say like Starve Your Ghouls, there's a big part of it that's about will and intention.
Yeah.
And I feel like at the end of the day, that's where it is. And yeah, like, you know, some people can probably use it without issue.
I think I think the problems can come, especially if you're younger, a child, a kid that is not fully mature, that has a lot of natural energy, a lot of can be naive.
Also attractive to the dark
things I mean, it's a kind of the perfect setup.
Yeah.
You know, you have this youthful energy where it seems like we always talk about kids are more
of a beacon.
They're more open. So if you think that they have maybe this light that these other darker beings can see, it just seems like it's not a good thing for them to mess with.
So you're saying it's like the perfect combination.
Yeah.
Well, going back to the beginning of the episode when you talked about you were running with your neighbor you met on the towpath, imagining what it would be like seeing spirits or those that have died and not moved on, wandering around and in many cases begging for your help, asking if you're trying to communicate with you constantly. So the Ouija board being that same kind of like, would you want to live with that ability? Do you want to open the door? That sounds like a difficult gift to have. So you're basically opening the door to that, whether it's actually someone who's died or something much darker. You are that beacon. You open the door and the light shines out of your suburban home where you're playing this board into the dark further.
Into the abyss.
Yeah. To the other side.
I wonder how many people have done this when they were young and opened up an ability where they do see spirits all the time for the rest of their life.
Like somehow connected.
I bet you there are people that are naturally probably inclined to this direction, and then the Ouija board is
kind of like a wedge.
Opens it fully.
It's like a wedge that keeps the door open.
Doorstop.
It's like that activation switch.
The devilish doorstop.
Interesting. Oh, I was going to say, we should say, did we ever say the name of that movie at the beginning?
Yeah.
We did say Talk to Me?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't remember that. Okay.
But yeah, I mean, everything about that movie, it's a worthwhile watch for sure.
Yeah.
I would definitely, if you want to be, it's not terrifying, but it's definitely one of those movies that kind of sits with you. And it's just, there's something about it. They do a really good job of capturing that youthful energy.
And that atmosphere.
And and obviously when they call them over, you know, it can get kind of dark.
That was obviously, like, I think you're right about what you said earlier, where that example of this hand in this film, but also in reality with the Ouija board where kids get excited and you kind of like ignore the dangers and possible danger signs and red flags. But it definitely like a little hard to believe, but it's a cinematic tool. But when suddenly there is a person who seems physical sitting across from you who's ghoulish and terrifying, and then a moment later you're like laughing and watching someone else do it, that'd be a little hard to believe.
Part of the explanation I think that I got from that was there also is like a euphoria.
Oh, that's true. It was like a drug almost.
Despite the terror you felt when you're in the moment, right after that, like, how does it feel? It felt amazing. So there was this
I think it's what you said, euphoric.
Yeah, it's drug-like induced euphoric state that came along with this temporary possession.
It was like a party drug.
So that's what I think it's almost like a sweet venom. You know what I mean? Like you were poisoned, but it felt good.
To lure you in.
Exactly.
But yeah, we haven't spoiled anything. It's a good watch. It's definitely creepy. It's a perfect Halloween movie. And it will remind you very much of the Ouija board interactions and this episode. So check it out.
It all comes back to the
It'll be fun to do horror movie reviews.
Yeah.
That'd be great. Well, in our new studio, hopefully we can set all that up.
We just got to find the space. Just kidding. We're already here.
Just got to get the gear.
Finish setting it up. Oh, and I almost forgot.
What? What is it?
Cue a little birthday music, because
there's a special man out there.
There's a special fella, and his name is Darrin.
Happy birthday, Darrin!
Happy freaking birthday, Darrin.
Yeah, big Bigfoot hugs to you, my friend.
From your gorgeous, awesome, amazing, thoughtful wife, Georgia, who wrote to us to tell us about your birthday and about your Bigfoot love, and that you're a very big man. Holy crap, you're tall. 6'10".
What? Really?
Towering.
He is part Bigfoot himself. Thanks for listening to the show, buddy.
Yeah, seriously. Love you guys. Thank you for your support out there. It means a lot to us, and we just want to wish you
Darrin, happy birthday, and thanks to Georgia for writing in. Listeners like you are the backbone of the show, and we appreciate you being out there and supporting us on the regular.
Yes.
So cheers to you guys. Have a happy freaking birthday, Darrin.
Here, here.
You guys go enjoy your socks off.
All right, guys. Well, we hope you enjoyed this episode.
Oh, wait, before we go, I think we have some special people to thank that made this episode possible. And at the beginning of that list are some extra special people, known here in the hole as Sky Whale Riders.
Sky Whale Rider. Sky Whale Rider.
Yes.
Oh, we have multiples?
We have multiples. James Peterson is riding the Sky Whale into the hole, carrying the last name of our great-grandfather before he changed it to Berg.
Peterson?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
That was great-grandfather, was it Antone?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yeah.
this is not about us.
No, it's about James Peterson, who may be related.
James Peterson. Thank you, sir, so much.
Yeah, seriously.
We deeply appreciate your efforts.
Yes, your generosity.
Yes.
We love you. You are making us thrive.
Yes.
And Jeffrey Gelamo is here. I think he's been a previous supporter, but now he has climbed up on that whale and he's riding it.
Yes.
Jeffrey.
And James.
Woo!
Thank you guys seriously so much. We sincerely appreciate the support. You are what makes the difference in the whole.
Yeah.
And now on to the remaining special people of the evening. Black-eyed cool kids and up. Welcome to. Coming in hot with the hair on their back and a flame in their chest and a ruff in their growl. It's a dogman whisperer known as Samwise Joe. I recognize that name from
Yes.
YouTube chats.
Samwise Joe,
What's
welcome
up,
in.
Samwise?
Samwise Ganji.
You've always got the cleverest, witty jokes in there on that stream.
Yes.
Check out Live Chat, guys. YouTube every other Sunday where we premiere. You'll see Samwise there.
Thank you so much.
Noel LaBruce or LaBrouse is here.
Noel.
What a pretty name.
It is a beautiful name.
Welcome to the show, The Hole.
Christmas is coming.
Yes, it is.
It's always Christmas when Noel's in the hole.
Jaker Huggett. Hi, Jaker.
Aw.
I remember you.
I'll take a hug.
Jaker had that great Dogman story.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That was excellent.
Well, now you're a Dogman whisperer, so
Aw.
next time you run into him, you can whisper your way into his heart.
Jaker.
Her? The Dogman.
Oh, my dog just
Oh.
stood up because his name is Jake.
Oh,
When I said Jaker.
adorbs.
Welcome in.
Thank you, Jaker. You're a sweetheart. Coltland K, another Dogman whisperer. Coltland K, welcome to
right.
be here.
Welcome, Colton.
Come on in.
Colton.
Is it Colton or Coltland?
Colton.
Oh, Colton. I said Coltland.
Coltland.
Colton, we love you.
We really appreciate it. Come on into the hole. Welcome to be here. Amanda E. Slack.
All right.
Cut her some slack. She's supporting the show. I don't know.
She's right on track to be in the hole.
That's right. Thank you so much, Amanda.
Yes.
Jenny Fields. Hi.
Aw. The Fields of Jenny.
Yes.
If you build it, Jenny will come
That's right.
to the hole.
Jenny Fields the Belief Hole.
Believe holes graze in your field. I don't know.
Thank you.
Thank you to be here.
Let's move along.
We do appreciate it. Thomas Arezzo is a Dogman whisperer at the door of the hole.
Tomas.
Welcome in.
Thank you for coming.
Sincerely, Thomas.
We love you.
Michelle Hill. Hi, another Dogman whisperer. Michelle.
Climb up to the top and see what you can see from Michelle Hill. The world of the future. Welcome in.
Okay, the world of the future, Michelle. Oh, that's a pretty name. Julissa Needham.
Oh, Julissa.
That's soft and fluttery.
Yes, welcome, Julissa. We're happy to have you. Oh, coming from the Highlands, Kat McLeod is here.
All right, there can be only one.
There can be only one.
Cat McLeod.
I hope you get that Highlander reference. We appreciate you being here, Kat.
Welcome in.
Sincerely. Who is a Dogman whisperer? Should have said. Marshall Doyle. Hi, welcome to be here.
Oh, Marshall. Marshall.
That's weird. Doylestown is next to Marshallville.
Yes.
That's true.
Well, that is weird.
Wow, look at that. Synchronicities. Welcome to be here.
Yes.
Sean Rita is here. Hi, Sean. What's up?
Welcome.
Man, why couldn't we have two first names for a last name?
Like John Stephanie?
Yeah.
I'd like that.
John Jacob, John David.
John Jacob Jr. Glyer Smith.
Yes.
I'm smitten with Sean. Okay, I'm going to move along now.
Let's do that.
Thank you, Sean. We do sincerely appreciate it. Brooke McKinnon. Hi.
Oh, hi.
Welcome to Thank You to Have You here.
Hey, Brooke.
Yes.
Hey, Brooke. Keep on babbling.
Just a very cash comment from John.
Hey, Brooke.
Hey, Brookie. Savannah Willis is a Dogman whisperer.
Yes.
All
yes,
right.
Yes, yes,
Savannah.
What a freaking hero.
Let her out of the
Damage
leash.
ya.
What is he talking about?
Not you.
Like she'll damage you
Yeah.
because she's dangerous.
Yes.
Because she is the Reaper girl.
Exactly.
I don't know what women like.
Reaper girl.
That's an email.
Welcome in, Savannah.
Kat Nicole Snyder. Hi.
Yes.
I like that.
Snyders of Hanover.
What's that?
The Snyders of Hanover?
The chip company?
Yes.
Yeah.
They do make great chips.
They make pretzels.
And they're local.
I don't understand why Adam doesn't like my Snyders of Hanover.
Oh, is that from Chad?
Yeah.
I remember
That
that.
is an old school insider.
Oh, that's a throwback to one of my passed on friends.
Yeah.
We miss you, Chad.
Rest in peace, Chad.
Thank you, Cat.
Thank you, Kat.
Meow.
Sincerely. Bob with a B.
Welcome
Bob
in.
with a B.
Welcome
Better than a
to
T.
be here. Oh, better than a C.
Better than a G.
Better than me.
Bob with a B. That was a whole training thing at Starbucks. You couldn't be too friendly to Bob with a B because there's other Bobs in line. Don't make other Bobs feel bad.
Really?
But you're a super special Bob with a B. You could be honored in our line.
That definitely sounds like a cartoon.
It does. Bob with a B.
David Westbrooks. Welcome to Be High in
All
here.
right. Welcome in, David. Our father's name.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that. A little cowboy action there.
Westbrook.
Yes.
William Moore is here.
Awesome.
More of what is the question?
Yes.
More of William.
More of the whole.
A spooky night on the William Moores.
Welcome to be here, brother.
Excellent.
Matthew P. Neal. It's good to see you, friend.
Nice.
P. Neal.
Matthew P. Neal.
Yes.
Matthew, what is it? Matthew P.
Matthew P. Neal. It's a middle initial.
Oh, Neil.
Yes.
Okay.
N-E-A-L.
Okay. Matthew
in.
P. Neal.
Yes.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, we sincerely appreciate it.
Weisman Smearly.
We got two dogmans coming in the hole. Got two men arriving
Approaching
in
the hole.
Approaching the hole. So
Get the treats out.
get the treats out. That's more welcome. I was going to say bat in the hatches. Bad Fish.
Yes.
And oh my gosh, dude, this is so weird. Bad Fish, thank you so much, brother. And David Wise.
Excellent.
This is so bizarre. So
Oh,
David
yeah.
Wise, I know that name. I Google it. I swear to God. Guess what it is, John? This is going to be weird for you too. It's the guy who wrote the aquatic music from Donkey Kong Country. And I was playing
weird.
that music
Yeah.
at the same moment. It's weird. I've been listening to the Donkey Kong Country and Nintendo 64 music for the past week. It's very calming. But I've been listening to that and I Googled David Wise and he has the same name of the guy who composed that exact music.
That
Is it
is
you?
weird.
Seriously,
I
like
would say that's not a very uncommon name.
David Wise?
Yeah.
It's the first one we have.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm stuck on the music right now.
But regardless, even if it is an uncommon name, it's still uncommon to just have it being played while
Yeah.
you're listening to something.
Why am I addicted to this calming, awesome? I'll put a link in the show notes. So Chris also enjoys the music.
Yes.
I didn't mean to leave you out.
Put me in there.
Anyways, David Wise, that was a little tangent, but just wanted to say, brother.
Is it you?
If you composed it, thank you. And if not, thank you for supporting the show. As a Dogman Whisperer.
What if you did?
That'd be awesome.
Then I want your autograph. Either way, I want your autograph because you're a special person.
Okay.
Okay. But seriously, thank you, David Wise.
Yes.
Sarah Collins, hi, welcome to be here.
Welcome in, Sarah. With an H or an A.
Doesn't matter.
Sarah Collins, you are welcome in the hole. Come on in. The water's warm.
The opposite of the evil of Darth Vader is James Bader, because he is a shadow person of interest.
No. That's a special category.
That is a very special category of
Yes.
supporter in the hole.
What was his name again?
James Bader.
James Bader. That's a cool
Yes.
name.
I like that.
That's definitely an actor name.
Yeah, or like an action star name.
Yeah.
James Bader.
Your parents did well.
Let him know. Thank you. Justin Gidison.
Excellent.
Or Giddison. Or
Yes.
Giddison is here.
Gideson.
Yes.
Gydesen.
Gidison.
Giddison.
Giddison.
Whichever one you are, we're glad you're here.
They're all perfect in my name.
perfect in my name.
I mean, that's not what I meant.
You are all perfect under my
I
name.
meant they were all perfect in my mind.
What a weird little
In my
God
name.
complex slip there.
It's getting towards.
I am a golden god.
It's my bedtime.
It is. It is.
Welcome in, James.
I am the golden god. I will reign supreme.
Of this place.
This place.
So good.
Alone supreme or something.
I alone reign supreme.
Yes, that's what it is.
Of this place. Okay, we're almost done. Amber. Wow, this is an interesting name. Wisniewski. That's the only way I can think to say it. Amber Wisniewski. I'm sorry if I said that wrong, but we do appreciate your support.
Amber, thank you for being here.
Your precious stone.
Your precious
are.
stone, yes. Will you trap mosquitoes so that we can harvest the DNA from dinosaurs?
Lovely
That's right.
water stone.
Yes, thank you to be here.
Welcome in.
Dave Baxter is a frickin' Dogman Whisperer and maybe a scientist who fights the Ninja Turtles.
David Baxter. I knew some Baxters growing up.
Did
I'm
you?
sure you're just as good as them.
Probably better,
I would hope so.
because he's a supporter.
They weren't very good.
What if he's related?
I'm joking. They were really good friends of mine.
I don't know any Baxters.
But I do now, and we're happy to have you.
Baxter's back.
All right. Okay. Another Dogman Whisperer, Emily Nichols. What a pretty name. That's a pretty name.
I'll give you a dime for 2 nickels.
So elegant. They make good
A
bread.
dime for 2 nickels? That's the change that you would make, wouldn't you?
Yes.
You could make change.
You're a sharp one, Jeremy.
Justin Devenberg is here.
All right.
Welcome to be here.
The devil's in the Devenbergs.
The devil is
In the details.
destroyed by the Devenbergs. Because the Devenbergs are good people. Welcome in. Zach, hi. Welcome to be here.
Zach, hi.
Hi, Zach. Zach. It's just Zach.
Oh, just Zach.
getting real. Zach coming in for a Zach attack.
Zach attack.
Ow! All right, guys, we have a whole herd of Dogman Whisperers coming in, so I'm going to go through these, but with the zest that they deserve. Jerry Thevenin.
Ooh, I like that. Top of the pack.
What is it?
Thevenin.
Thevenin.
Or Thevenin. Jerry Thevenin.
Oh, that's a fun
That's a
word to
really
say.
cool name.
Feels good on my
Yes.
lips.
Thank you, Dogman Whisperer. Leaping Lynx.
Leaping Lynx.
Another Dogman Whisperer leaping into the hole.
Welcome in, friend.
Leaping Lynx.
Boink, 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 boink.
Those aren't really leaps.
They're jumps.
Those are like Tiger
I mean,
Tigger.
it could be like a video game.
Yeah,
Boink.
that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Like little Tigger hop.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, Leaping Lynx, thank you for being Dogman Whisperer and being super special and generous with your support. Another Dogman Whisperer, Anna Choate. Or Choti. I like Choate. I don't know how to say your name.
Welcome in. Both are pretty.
I like all forms of it. Neither of those are probably right.
We are sorry.
Anna Choate.
We do our best.
We do. But we seriously, you're a Dogman Whisperer and we owe it to you, so I'll look it up later and I'm going to personally email you and just thank you.
Anna
Anna.
is my favorite female name. One of my
It
favorites.
is in my top 3, too.
Yep, definitely.
It's classic.
It's all right.
Shut your face.
And finally, our final supporter to be mentioned tonight at the Black Eyed Cool Kids Here and Up is Chastity Hayes.
Yes. Beautiful.
Chastity Hayes. We're happy to have you.
Thank you for being here, Chastity.
Thank you for being here. Yes.
We like you.
The hole
Yes.
is cleared of the haze when Chastity Hayes is here.
There you go.
Rephrase the days when Chastity.
Hayes
Plays in the maze.
in the belief hole.
It's been a long day.
The maze of the Bleeful. All right, guys. Thank
Thank you.
Seriously, thank you so much. All joking and ridiculousness aside, you guys are burning the fires to keep the show warm.
Yes. Well, we hope you guys enjoyed this part of our anthology of Ouija Boardness.
Ouija Boardness.
If you guys want to hear more, we have one in the expansion and one in the archive.
Yeah, we go deep into the history and some real horrific stories, honestly. The Zozo one carried with it many stories from Ouija Boards Gone Wild by Rosemary Ellen Guiley, I believe.
And we discussed Sylvia Plath's experience of writing over decades through the help of Ouija Board with her husband and the crazy fallout that had in her relationship.
So we'll put links to those in the show notes if you guys want to check those out.
Yeah.
You're an expansion member. If you're not, sign up. And as always, thank you guys so much. And stay safe out there.
Starve those ghouls, especially this time of year.
Absolutely.
And stay cool.
Stay cool. Don't be somebody's fool.
This year. All right, guys. We'll see you next time
On
Belief Hole.
The pull got stronger, not on the pencils. The pull for more, like being in a relationship with a boy who mystified you. You'd held hands, kissed, graduated to making out. But now he wanted to go beneath your... It's weird to read as a boy. I'm a boy.
I'm a boy.
All right, John, you're the friend here, I think.
Let's make a board.
She's a baby goat.
Let's make a board. Ha ha ha. Let's make a board, Jenny.
One of us suggested. I couldn't remember which. We were both nervous and excited about moving to spiritual second base.
All right.
Things I Don't Understand by Chad Smith. I don't understand why every time I go to give Adam jalapeno pieces pretzels, he doesn't want any because he doesn't want to give him the chance because the brand name of Snyder. And I don't understand why they say you have a good Caribbean cruise and then there's all its catches. Like this sticker on this Schneider's of Hanover pretzel bag says. But I'd have to say these are the best pretzels I have ever had. Thank you.